As you've seen in a previous video, I've changed my tyre size, or will be changing my tyre size, from a standard 120/90 to a 130/80. And I started to wonder if that would have an impact on my engine revs. It won't have an impact on the speedo because the speedo obviously is on the front wheel, but it might have an impact on engine revs. So for those of you that have been listeners for a while, you'll know that I'm an engineer, and when I used to run engineering teams, I used to come in the morning and say, I've been thinking, when everybody dived for cover. So just be on this one, just be aware I've been thinking. So let's have a look at what impact a change in a tyre might have on a Suzuki. So the first thing is just get everybody in the same headspace. So the width of the tyre, the height of the tyre, and the rim width. So when you get a tyre 130/80 by 17, it's 130 wide in millimeters, so that's the width. The 80 is the aspect ratio, it's a percentage of the width, and the 17 is the diameter in inches. So you get a little bit of mix of millimeters and inches in your tyre size. So for a 130/80 by 17, the tyre is 130 wide, 104 high, and 17 inches in diameter. The rim width, interestingly, is never discussed in your tyre sizes, but there is standard rim width for tyre sizes. You can Google that and look up a table, and I'll not be discussing that any on this video. So let's have a look at what happens. So here's a 120/90 by 17. So the tyre width is 120. The tyre height is 108, which is just 120 by 0.9. And then the wheel diameter is 17 inches, which is 432 millimeters effectively. So your tyre diameter from top to bottom is 431, which is your wheel, plus 2 times 108, which is your tyre height, which your tyre diameter is about 650 mil. Your tyre circumference then is just pi d, if I recall my school algebra or whatever it's called. And so you get your tyres about 2 meters all the way around. So it's 2.034 meters, which is 2,000 millimeters. If you go to a 130/80 by 17, the tyre width is obviously 130. It's 130 by 0.8, which is 104 high. So it's interesting, it's 4 millimeters shorter than the 120. And then your wheel diameter is unchanged at 17. So your tyre diameter is 639.8, which is 8 millimeters. So your 8 millimeters difference in your tyre diameter. Your tyre circumference then calculates to be 2009 millimeters, which is 25 mil difference, interestingly. And so surprisingly, the bigger tyre gives you a smaller wheel. And so my conclusions from this is the speedometer is on the front wheel to start with, so you don't get a change in your speedo reading. I'm going 90 to 90 to 90 to 90 tyre, so that shouldn't change. However, the revolutions to wheel distance will change because of the circumference is 25 millimeter less. When the wheel travels one full cycle, I'll be 25 millimeters lacking compared to the original. So that would also reduce the gearing. So the bigger tyre will reduce the gearing because every turn of the wheel you travel 25 mil less. So theoretically, for the same speed, the engine will rev slightly higher. As an aside over here, my DRS speedo at the moment, the speedo reads 106 and the actual GPS shows me 100. And so my speedo actually overestimates my speed at the moment by about 6 kilometers an hour at 100. So it's a little bit off. And a lot of car manufacturers and bike manufacturers do that. They give you a slight error positive so that you don't get caught by speeding cameras all the time. And so mine's is about 6% off, as you see there. So anyway, so that's the conclusions from just the raw calculations. So if I go to the next page and say, so what does that do to my engine revs? So here's the drivetrain, So you've got your primary gearing, you've got your final gearing, and you've got your gear ratios. I think in Australia we're all 42 cogs at the rear. We used to be 41, but we're now 42. I think it was 2017 when that changed, if I'm right. So your top gear reduction ratio, as you go from your primary to your gearbox to your final, you end up with a number of about 5. So basically 5 RPMs in the engine gives you 1 wheel turn. Okay, so what does that mean? So I've got a tyre circumference, which I calculated previously, 2034 and 2009. If I pick 100 kilometers an hour for each wheel, that means your wheel's doing 819 revs for your 120/90, and it's doing about 829, 830 revs for your 130/80. So your actual wheel is revving a bit faster to do 100 kilometers an hour. So your engine revs is your wheel revs times your reduction ratio. So your engine's sitting about 4,200 or 4,127 to be exact, RPM at 100 kilometers an hour. And so for your 130, it's sitting slightly higher because remember you got a slightly smaller speed, a slightly smaller wheel, sorry. And so you're doing 829 times 5, so 41. So you're actually doing 52 RPM more to reach 100 miles an hour because you're driving at the rear wheel. And so surprisingly, the bigger tyre gives you a smaller wheel, which gives you more engine RPM. Okay, so if you want to fix it, so if you put a 16-tooth cog on the front, that would drop your gearing and your speed, your engine RPM would drop to 3.9. If you put a 41 rear tooth on, that'll drop you to 4.9 gearing, and your RPM would drop to 4,000. But I noticed that some people running bigger sprockets, they're running 43 or 44 tooth on the back, and it's supposed to give you better low speed work. And so really, my conclusion from that is going to a bigger tyre is actually in the right gearing direction anyway. So going to a bigger tyre, smaller circumference, is actually in the right direction because it's reducing your gearing anyway. So my conclusions from all of this is your 130/80 tyre lowers the rolling tyre gearing slightly because it's a smaller circumference. Your engine will rev slightly higher for the same road speeds. I presume that will make your fuel economy slightly worse because your engine's going to be revving slightly higher. It will be better ever so slightly for low speed work because you've just reduced your gearing by a tiny bit. And it's a better tyre than the Deathwings anyway, so who cares? So there's my conclusion. So the 130/80 does change your engine rev slightly, and but that's really about it, and it'll give you a better tyre. So if you want to know the impact, that's it. And I've already told you if you want to correct it, you can change your rear sprocket or your engine sprocket. Hope that helps somebody to understand what tyre changes do to your DR. Thanks for watching.